Hello, Asia.
Hello, world.
Welcome to my new co-host.
Hello.
Last week we had Dr. Gopal from the National Election Observation Committee in Nepal and Kun Pong Chanon from We Watch in Thailand to discuss empowered citizen engagement and participation in election and democracy, particularly about their observation and expertise in Nepal and Thailand, respectively. As you can see, we have a hybrid session right now. We will have remote guests, and we just launched the report in Nepal. That's why there are people saying goodbye.
And we cannot say goodbye to
We
them.
cannot say goodbye back because we're doing this live. So again, going back to my recap from last week's discussion, Dr. Gopal and Tisong highlighted the challenges in participating in elections for particular sectors, including citizens living and working abroad and persons with disabilities, among many others. A report from The Economist, just to look back from our previous episode, no? A report from the Economist Intelligence Unit on democracy trends around the world offered a slightly positive outlook on democracy with an improvement in the global index after 8 years of declining scores. One critical indicator in the report that contributed to this is the rise and impact of political participation. Although the report said political participation, while it's necessary, is insufficient, um, it's an inefficient stem through which to achieve and solidify stronger democracies because institutional reforms and increase in civil liberties and great influence in outcomes through the electoral processes of the people's political participation is still, of course, very much needed. I can see people at the back.
Don't mind them, guys.
Reforms related to access to resources and lowering the age requirement to run in elections are some of the recommendations from the last episode. The need for competence and integrity of the members and officials of election management bodies was also noted, as well as measures to improve accessibility and inclusion in elections. In this episode of the Election Observer podcast, also the second part of last week's episode, we're diving deeper into empowering citizen engagement and participation in elections and democracy with seasoned electoral analysts,
Season
Ona,
with pepper and salt.
who have observed elections in Asia. I'm your host, John Antiquera,
And I'm your host, Ona Caritos.
and we are live via Anfro's Facebook and LinkedIn pages, as well as via Anfro's YouTube channel. The episodes of the Election Observer podcast can also be streamed later on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. With us today I will go with you first, to Attorney Ona Caritos, because you're already here, the Executive Director of the Legal Network for Truthful Elections.
Hi, Mom. I made it.
Jyoti Mishra, Assistant Professor at Amity University Punjab, and Asanka Senadeera, Senior Project Officer. Wait, I will add Asanka here. Senior Project Officer of the People's Action for Free and Fair Elections, or PAFFREL. Hello, Jyoti, Ona, and Asanka. Welcome to the Election Observer podcast.
Hello.
Thank you.
Namaste.
I hope we're clear because we've been having technical difficulties earlier, and we tried some workarounds, and I hope it worked.
Does it work, Jyoti, Asanka?
You
Yeah,
can
it's
hear us
working. Yes,
clearly.
it's working. Definitely,
That,
yes.
that's great. No. Of course, as I've said, we've invited seasoned electoral analysts. And if you've been following our election observation missions, particularly in Thailand, in Bangladesh, and here in Nepal, we're in Kathmandu right now to launch we'll talk about it later. You would probably know, of course, and have seen us interact with the guests that we have today because Jyoti served as our electoral analyst for two elections already in Thailand. Asanka, of course, was also with AF, who's also Ona's colleague in observing and actually as electoral analyst in Bangladesh. And we have here,
I'm just here for food.
yes, we have here Ona, who has also was also an electoral analyst in the last election here in Nepal.
Yeah.
So very consistent. We have our very qualified electoral analysts joining us for this particular episode. As I've mentioned, of course, but electoral participation is very much important. That's why we are discussing this right now. Of course, for context, when we refer to electoral and democratic participation, we don't just mean voting, because I
Mhm.
think a lot of people just stop with voting. No, it also, of course, involves participation as candidates, but also as an enabling environment to air grievances and mechanisms to take part in reforms and policymaking. Also, of course, in taking part in civil society organization work.
Mhm.
On electoral participation, this is my first question to you guys. What have been the significant challenges for the electorate to participate in elections as both voters and candidates that you've observed in the elections that you were part of? Or even in your elections, because Jyoti is from India and Asanka is from Sri Lanka and you're from the Philippines, so we will be able to cover more countries for this episode. Maybe we start with you first because you're here beside me.
I was ordered by my co-host to answer the first question. To answer the question, when we're talking about participation and access, I have an acronym for it, John.
Mm-hmm. What is it?
The acronym is ERA.
E
IRA.
Ira. Okay.
So the barriers are: I is for information,
Mm-hmm.
R is for resources,
Mm-hmm.
and A is accessibility.
Okay.
So those are the barriers for voters and candidates when it comes to participating in the elections, not only in voting but also the overall component of political participation. When we talk about information, not a lot of us have that access to information. So some voters, some candidates have that natural access, but in some sectors of the population, they don't have access to information. For
Mm-hmm.
example, if they want to run in the elections, John, do you know how to run in the Philippines?
You
What's the
you file a
process?
candidacy.
You file a candidacy. But what do you need to do when you file your certificate of candidacy?
I have no ambitions to run in
Yes.
elections on.
So, but in our work in Lente, Jyoti, Asanka, just to share, that's always the problem. People ask us, what are the requirements in running? Not for voting, what are the requirements? So we talk about the qualifications.
Mm-hmm.
But when we talk about qualifications, it's not only about qualifications. There's a procedure behind the filing of certificate of candidacy.
Mm-hmm.
And not a lot of people are aware about that information,
Mm-hmm.
that process. So that's one significant barrier that people
Mm-hmm.
overlook when it comes to electoral participation.
Mm-hmm.
I've been talking a lot, so I might pass the mic to Jyoti or Asanka.
Yes, we lost not Jyoti. We lost the Sanka, maybe
No,
internet problems, but
Asanka, come back. Where is Asanka?
maybe we can hear from Jyoti. Uh,
There,
Yeah,
there's Asanka.
there's
I
a Sanka. We
just,
can see her here.
yeah. So, first of all, thank you very much for having me today, and thanks, Anfrel, having me again. It's
Of
been a
course.
few months after the election mission, international election observation mission in Bangladesh. If I discuss about Bangladesh first, in 2024, in Bangladesh parliamentary elections, the
Mhm.
political situation was very polarized, and one of the main political parties was boycotted the election, and they were arguing that there were no conditions for a free and fair elections. So as a result, many citizens felt that citizens also voters also they felt that the electoral competition was limited, and that their voice and their vote might not meaningfully influence the political outcome. But when it comes to the 2026 elections, especially the parliamentary elections and referendum in Bangladesh, you know that it was a kind of a good result after the 2024 youth-led uprising and student
Mhm.
mobilization movement. So they were demanding a kind of good governance and equal representation, anti-corruption practices, and the accountability from the political authorities, and they were expecting a kind of new Bangladesh. especially young people. They wanted a kind of strong voice in national decision making and reforms. Since we are talking about reforms and institutional reforms,
Mm-hmm.
so
Yes.
following the youth-led uprising, I believe that the expectation was that the country, they were expecting that the country would move from the interim interim government, to establish a kind of political government. So that's
Mm-hmm.
why the election was very important and very crucial for Bangladesh. So when it comes to talk about challenges, significant challenges in participation in elections in Bangladesh, especially for voters, we saw that the money politics and intimidation and political violence were still there, still were remain significant challenges. Uh, Even though the election day was conducted orderly and peacefully, uh, the pre-election period and post-election period, there were tensions and there were pressure for voters, and there were continued muscle power we have seen.
Mm-hmm.
There were also concern about some partisan activities we have seen, like there were many officers, temporary officers we have established near polling stations by political parties. So we believe that that activity has been negatively affected for the free choice of free vote of voters, citizens, and also the public trust. Obviously, we are going to talk about this
Yes.
later in a large manner, but many citizens still had limited confidence in whether electoral violations would actually be investigated, or the or punished. And there were weak enforcement of campaign finance regulations, but we can still see there are no sanctions or punishment for the candidates who exceeded uh, the legal campaign finance ceiling limit. So it was kind of a challenging situation for voters for their participation, and also the very important issue that we have observed, like access and inclusion uh, for vulnerable communities, such as
Mm-hmm.
persons with disabilities, especially for elders, elderly citizens, and ethnic and religious minorities, especially in Bangladesh context, and gender diverse communities. If you can remember, uh, only one third gender candidate, uh,
Yes.
yeah, she was very eager to contest in the elections. By the time, what happened was, like, she was escaped from the election campaign uh, for many reasons, and she was demanding that she was telling, like, I'm escaping from the campaign, but I'm demanding to ensure the rights of third gender communities in the parliament, in the legislation. So it happened, and you see that youth participation was very, they were very enthusiastically participated in the pre-election period. Uh, the main reason was the for the election was the youth-led uprising movement. But uh, by the time in the polling day, we have seen that they were very keen to go to polling stations. But after the elections, only few candidates were elected,
Mm-hmm.
and we have seen, like, their enthusiasm was gradually decreased, and in the national level now only 12 young people were elected. So those are the main challenges I have seen in elections in Bangladesh for voters. When it comes to candidates, we have seen like very few women representation was there. Only,
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
yeah, even though the July National Charter proposed some provisions to have at least 5% for women candidates,
Mhm.
it's happened. Only few political parties have been nominated women candidates, and many of the political parties they have not nominated single women candidate. So
Mm.
those were the challenging situations I have seen and we have analyzed in the Bangladesh elections in 2026. We can discuss this
Yes.
further. Yeah.
Yep, maybe we can hear from Jyoti.
John, before we go to Jyoti's
What?
answer,
Mm.
I just want to react
Yes,
to
go
the
ahead.
to the answer of Asanka.
Why not?
Kasi
Go.
parang hearing those answers, those are the traditional barriers
It,
of
yeah.
participation, right? And when you juxtapose it to what happened to the movement of the young people in Bangladesh,
Mm.
is that's just so sad to hear.
Mm. But then I don't want to prolong the discussion on this
Mhm.
because ANFIL is also going to be
Yeah.
releasing a final report on our observation of the last
So that's
elections
pressure on you, Asanka. Final
in
report.
Bangladesh. I would give them the benefit of the doubt that
Mhm.
it is you would what you could consider transitioning democracy after the rule of Sheikh Hasina
Mhm.
to something more of an open and democratic, at least going to that direction, hopefully going to that direction. So um, we hope, of course, that these barriers would be addressed later
Yeah.
on for something, for a country, particularly Bangladesh, that is still transitioning into realizing their democratic aspirations.
Mhm. Thank you for that, John.
Yes. Yes,
Go,
Jyoti.
Jody!
So yes, thank you, John, for having me here and the NFIL team for giving me this opportunity to especially talk on this topic. So it's a very timely conversation because it's not concentrated in one region of globe. If you look at the pattern, because I refer to that EIU index, and I found that though there is a slight increase in the democratic index value, but if you look at the Asia, so Asia is facing that decline. So that decline is still there. So, and especially in South Asia. So, if you look at two patterns, so one is that people are having some kind of frustration with the government. They are not trusting the public institutions, and at the same time, there is another phenomena which is emerging, that people are engaging with politics or political domain, especially the youth ones. So youth are
Mm.
they are accumulating their interest together and they are protesting. They are, and if you look at the recent movement in Sri Lanka, Nepal, Bangladesh, all the movements were led by the youth people, and they were more concerned about the political freedom, and they were also concerned about the democratic structure. So altogether, if you'll ask whether people are still concerned about democracy, I'll say definitely they do concern about democracy and democratic structure. But at the same time, the bigger question is whether the political structure or the political institution are accountable and responsible towards people concerned. So that is the very important crucial issue to look at. So
Mm.
then what is the political participation? Because there is a kind of misconception about this term. When people say it's a political participation, they
Mhm.
just restrict that term with the electoral participation, like their participation in election or during the time of election. But it actually goes beyond that time. So it starts with people's engagement with political activities, social activities, whether they are free to express their opinion, whether they can come up and rally on some issues, how the government are responding to those concerns. So that participation goes beyond the electoral participation, and it's not only restricted to electoral participation. That one point I want to flag here. And then when we look at the barriers, Amal, because we were discussing and we were there for the silent observation. And it's very common factor is the money politics. And Asanka has already pointed that out, but it's not only restricted to some, but it's everywhere. And if I'll mention, so it's not only affecting the voter, it's also affecting the candidate, because elections are becoming very expensive. People, and especially the political candidate, they are spending a lot of money on their campaign. Not only the door-to-door canvassing, they are spending, I think, big amount of money for the online digital campaign. And that is also leading up to the kind of construction of misinformation, because people are getting they are approaching or accessing the social media platform for getting information. And Ona correctly pointed that out, that they are getting the information, but that information is not validated. So they are getting the information, sometimes there is no political structure or body that is actually providing that validity, whether they are receiving the information correctly or not. So that can also be very dangerous for the people, because once they will start mistrusting these information, and that can further lead to the disengagement of voter, because they will not be sure about the information of the candidate, for the political information. So that can also be a challenging part on that end. And then I also want to make one important point here, that people, and especially I can refer to the Thailand election, that there is a lack of or shrinking civic space. People are not able to, speak on very crucial issues. And if you'll see the political context or some of the coercive laws in Thailand, like 112 and other such laws and restrictions, where people are not able to speak on various important and crucial subjects. And because we are working on Thailand report, and we have mentioned that there's a big number of people, those were arrested on the line of that argument, that they have breached that law. So that place is also shrinking with people, and the voters, they are not able to speak up their mind, they are not able to voice their concern on certain issues. And then again, Asanka has talked about this, that there is a structural exclusion of certain categories. So when I'm saying certain category, definitely women are there, young people are there, and minority community, ethnic groups, and some third gender people like LGBTQT. So if you look at them, they are structurally excluded from the political structure. So if I'll take one reference for India, because in India in early 19s, there were two policies, though two amendments, where they had included women in the mainstream politics. Though that reservation or quota was restricted to the local politics, so they were allowed to contest for 33% of the total seats in the local elections. And through that, we can see that many states or provinces have taken that initiative for them, and they have reserved 50% of the seat for the women candidate. And that has actually grounded the women participation in election, because they are now politically educated, they are politically motivated to take the bigger roles. And keeping that point in mind, 2 years back, there was another amendment and reform in electoral system, where there was a reservation for women for the national election as well as for the state or provincial level election, so that they can be included in the politics and they can take part in political structure. Because I was inquiring about this issue in Thailand observation also. I asked many stakeholders, a political party, a candidate, about this kind of demand. Why you are not demanding? So I was told by some of the political parties that Election Commission has given that guideline that parties can take the initiative to nominate or reserve some seat for the women candidate, but there is no mandate. So it's on the choice of the political party whether they want to nominate or want to give seats to women candidate for that election. And again, there are other minority communities also which need special attention, because structurally, if you'll include them in the political system, they will be more assertive and participating in the election. So that's what I just want to say on this.
Thank you,
topic.
Jyoti. You know, John, you will
Yes.
kill me because there's not supposed to be banter between
Yeah, no,
us.
this is good, no? I'm used to just hosting it also this on my own, so it's nice to have a co-host.
Because we have a time limit. But
Yes.
as I was listening to you, Jyoti, I was reflecting on one of the parts of your answer. I think aside from the barriers that you've just mentioned in Asanka, back in the Philippines, there was a survey conducted among young people.
Mm,
And that survey asked these young people, do you want to run in the elections?
mhm,
The Philippines has a very young voter population.
mhm.
Out of 80 million, 40 million are young voters,
Ah,
18 to 30 years old.
mhm.
But you know what's sad in that survey?
What?
And I've mentioned sad again,
Mm,
the second time. More than 50% of the young people asked did not want to participate in politics,
including me.
including you.
Yes.
So aside from the natural barriers, it's like a chicken and egg question, John.
Mm,
That people, young people are getting frustrated
yes.
because of the natural barriers. Then they don't just participate,
Mm,
not only in voting but in running in the
mm,
elections. So
mm,
we're running out of options for the future.
mm,
I just reflecting on that part of your answer, Jyoti, that aside from the natural barriers, it's actually the problem still also with the young people, with the other populations that they don't feel that confident, that engaged when it comes to political participation. What
mm.
do you think, John?
I think it also is.
But I want to
Um,
expand. I just want to expand on this point. Yeah, because in fact, in 2013 or 14, we also conducted a study because I was with one of the organization and they were a very systematic and thematic study on Indian youth. And in fact,
mhm,
we also found this kind of answer, but in our answer, only around 20 or 25% of the young cohort they said that they want to be in active politics. But after, so I just want to highlight about this timeline because after one of the big political and social movement in India, it was in 2012. It was very big political movement where many youth they took participate, and they, as an outcome, there was one political party. So one political party came into existence after that political movement, and after that, many young people have taken part. Many young candidates were elected to the state assembly elections and the national assembly election, and we have statistical data for that. The proportion of the young candidate in election has actually gone up. So now that disenchantment with the politics has shrunk in some region, and in India, I'm looking at data, and I can assure you that there is a now positive trend that now they are getting into politics. And in fact, recently we had 5 state election, and one of the state Tamil Nadu just saw one massive change. So that state was having a bipolar contestation between two regional parties, but now one film actor, he launched his party 2 years back. He contested the election here, and he just got the majority of seat. So with that, and many young people, they were candidate in his party. So they were elected to the parliament. So yes, there is a kind of lack of knowledge. They are not well equipped with the information and technical part of running the government. But once they are into the system, I think it's very easier for them to get the nitty-gritty of the politics and how to run the political institution. And that is what I also observed in Thailand, because there are different political parties and very strong regional, strong old political parties, because they are now
mhm,
sure that people are they just want to get rid of the senior politician. So what they have started their youth program. They are training the young
mm,
the young politician. They are training them to be in the politics. They are also telling them how to deal with your people in your constituency. So I don't want to name the political parties in the Thailand, but while we were discussing about those issues, we found that trend that they have formal inclusion of youth in their political party. They are training them,
Mhm.
they are giving them ticket, and they want to make the young candidate their faces. So that is one trend which is now I can see that it is changing now, that youth are willing to get into the politics, and political parties are also prioritizing the young candidate, and they want to put that burden of young candidate because they know that they cannot ignore the interest of young people, and for
Mhm.
doing that they are including them in the political system. Yeah.
I have a follow-up on this, no, particularly to Asanka and Ona here, who observed elections in Nepal and in Bangladesh. These two elections have some similarities because it was something that was born out of what the protest
Yes.
actions in those countries. So we've seen this in Thailand, where there is an increase in political participation of the youth because of the protest actions as well in the 2020. You know, I was just wondering if after the protest in Thailand, despite the barriers that we've already mentioned, the whether or not the protest action translated into political participation of the youth in elections in Bangladesh and Nepal. Asanka.
Yeah, thank you very much for highlighting those concerns, Professor. And in Sri Lankan situation also, we have seen like youth community has been uh, very interestingly participated in the mass uprising and informal political movement, social movements. They were the main pillar who played a main role, crucial role in the mass uprising, youth uprising in Colombo and some other across the country. But when it comes to the aftermath of the youth uprising in Sri Lanka, so we have seen like there was no kind of very strong political party for them to represent their voice actually, and there was a kind of transition period. So the traditional political proceeding was happening during that transition period. So by that time, the interest of the youth and their politics and their interest in participation in politics and governance was gradually decreased. And even though a kind of left-wing political party, left-wing political alliance has been come to the power, uh, they have also the responsibility to keep the youth, I mean, in kind of a very interest level and concern their political rights and civil rights and social rights, especially the economic rights. Uh, but like in Bangladesh, uh, after the huge uprising movement, the voice of the youth has been decreased, and they're still searching. I mean, when it comes to the National Charter and the reform package that Bangladesh has been proposed, it's a kind of a very I mean very important and highly political and highly highly socialized document, not only document but also very important reform package. But youth don't have a kind of trust and the interest, or especially the trust, whether the current government uh, will implement the reform package, will implement the July National Charter properly.
Yes.
That's the issue.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Thank you,
Ona.
Asanka. But before I answer your question, John, I would
Yes.
like to say a special shout out to the staff of the Marlo Hotel for the for the great service. We just launched our Nepali report here just this morning, and they really gave us good service
Mhm.
in making this event possible. But
Yes.
going back to your question, John, As to political participation, as we all know, the election happened because of the Gen Z uprising.
Yes.
That's the theme for the past 7 8 months in the country. But unfortunately, although these young people they want, for example, to be candidates, nominees of political parties in the country, based from the discussions that we had with different stakeholders all over the country, unfortunately, barriers like eligibility requirements, gatekeeping on the
Mm.
part of the old guards, on the
Mm.
part of the old people from these old established political parties, nomination requirements were natural barriers to these people
Mm.
to participate more than being a voter because they wanted to run in the elections. Unfortunately, the political parties, the machineries are not yet ready to absorb these young people. But if you take a look at the turnout and given the direction that the young people would want to take for their country here in Nepal, you can see that the vote of the young people were reflected in the results
Ah.
because the old political parties they did not get that many seats
Mhm.
compared to previous elections.
Okay.
We now have a new ruling party with a government of the day which got the majority.
Mhm.
This is something new in the Nepali politics because for the longest time, not one political party gets that majority.
Mhm.
That's why there's always a coalition. That's why there's always infighting in the government. But now we have a political party which has a majority.
Mhm.
And this political party is new, relatively, compared to the old established ones in the
Mhm.
country. So
Mhm.
although we did not see many young people
Mhm.
as candidates, as
Yes.
nominees. You can see their participation in the way the elections turned out in the country.
Mm. Um, the trend that I'm seeing from the discussion, of course, there are structural barriers
Mhm.
for particular sectors like the youth, and other vulnerable sectors who may not necessarily have resources to participate. And I think part of that structural issue is also informed by cultural norms and biases.
Mhm.
Um, of course, you cannot detach fully the cultural norms
Mhm.
in the country in terms of how it is, how it affects policy making,
Agree.
right? So my question is, because of these deeply rooted biases, which are then influence or become part of policy making, how do you think can civil society organizations engage people in discussions where we wanted to discuss on this level first before the policy,
Mhm.
how do you think they can engage people in discussions to reflect on these cultural norms and their effect on policy making that then affect, of course, citizen engagement and participation in democratic processes? How do you think that conversation could be done?
Such a hard question, Asanka, Jyoti. No, I was telling John earlier, you have hard questions for this
But
podcast.
you need to answer hard questions to get clear answers.
Okay.
Since you started, go ahead on. What is your response?
But I took down notes because I really found the question so hard. Man.
Mhm.
I'm not kidding. I think for civil society organizations, we don't want to be token advocates.
Yes.
Because in this line of work, it's easy to go the easy route. You just go to the motions of having consultations, discussions with people,
Mhm.
with marginalized populations, with indigenous people. But as we all know, we are all in this space for a long time already. That takes time
Mhm.
and it takes so much effort. And we're not really sure if we will get the result.
Mhm.
Sometimes it leads to heartbreak, actually.
Mhm.
Sometimes we don't get the result, but we still go through that process.
Mhm.
So that's my answer to that question. We need to be patient.
Okay.
We need to trust the process. The
Mhm.
process is hard. The process is long. It will not be linear.
Mhm.
It will not be by this time next year this will be done. This will be the face or the image of these people that I'm working with. Maybe the next time you will encounter the community or the people that you're working with, they taken a step back actually.
Mhm.
So the process is not linear. It will be a back and forth process, but that's the process for us to effectively engage and not be token
Yes.
advocates. We need to do the hard work.
Mhm.
So that's my answer to your question, John. We
Mm.
should not be token advocates.
Okay. How about you, Jyoti and Asanka? Aside from not being token advocates, what else can we do to have that conversation with the electoral stakeholders? No,
Mhm.
um, on
So
culture.
maybe
Yes, Jyoti.
yeah. So I'll refer to the Thailand politics where I really saw that civil society organization, they were the pillar of I think, strengthening the democracy, because I saw that various association or organization, they were working really very hard on the ground to educate voters. They were also, because that was the time when we were there for observation, I saw that along with the national or general election, people were also voting on the referendum. They were also voting on the referendum whether to change the constitution or not. And there were many civil society organizations, those who were working on that education, whether how to people go and how they can go and vote. And not only that, say, it's one part of their activity. They were also working on strengthening people's right, because we met different civil society organization. We talked about some of the organization, those who were working with the disabled people. So some of them, they were working on blind people or even dumb people, and how during the conversation we got to know that they are interacting with election management bodies and political actors to make the campaign informative or accessible. And we also saw some of the results when different political party, when they were doing the campaigning, they actually associated translator or maybe some people with sign language while doing their campaign, because those were the issues raised by these associations. Along with that, I also want to mention about one of the civil society organization, those who are working for the right of the barred people, or the people those who were arrested under some of the coercive laws, and they were negotiating with different stakeholders for giving them their political right to vote. So these are the things which I think civil society actor, they act as a bridge between people and government. They accumulate or aggregate all the voices of the people, especially those who are marginalized or those who are not able to assert their voice in open platform. So these civil society organizations, they aggregate the interests and voices of those people and communicate that to the administration or the political actor. And that is the beauty of democracy, where there is a, so if people are not directly engaging with the political structure, these civil society organization, they make or they act as a channel between these two entity. And in a way it work as a it's kind of blossom of the democracy, I can just say, because that they are connecting two dots together for the for strengthening of the democratic structure. So one point is this, and I also mentioned about that how these civil society organizations are also working with the vulnerable sector or people from marginal community to include or strengthen their political participation in election or political system. So for me, the political civil society actor in Thailand, they are working really very hard, because if you will ask me in India, can I name some civil society organization, those who are working for this for the political participation or making people engage in the political system, I cannot actually tell you the name. Though there are different platform or different association, those who are working for the interest of of some group, they are negotiating with the government for the policy making, and they are getting the policy making done in the favor of those groups, but not for motivating or engaging people into the political system. So that I just want to make that point clear here.
John, I
Yes.
really like
What?
that word in Jyoti's answer.
Which one?
Blossom. Blossom.
Blossom.
Yes. Blossom
Flowering.
like flowers, Jyoti. Blossoming democracy.
Blossoming democracy. That's
Yes.
awesome. That's nice.
Good, good,
Yeah,
good.
yeah. Asanka.
Yeah, I think engaging with these deeply rooted cultural norms and
Yes.
cultural, the barriers. The civil society, they have to create safe and inclusive spaces for dialogue. Beyond the formal workshops and engage communities at the grassroots level, especially women, as Professor Ona
Mhm.
mentioned, and youth and marginalized groups. In Bangladesh situation, there are uh, ethnic and religious minorities. We have seen like they were in kind of fear to go to the polling station in the polling day. Uh, I mean, they were in the doubt, like what will happen to us, whether whether we are going to be discriminated or kind of things. Then, when people can openly talk about issues like stigma and cultural barriers and exclusion or
Yes.
harassment, and civil society can help them to talk about to create a dialogue and no to uh, to create a safe space for them uh, beyond the formal workshops and awareness campaign, and also linking personal experience to policy outcome would be also kind of an important step can be done by civil society organization. The
Mm-hmm.
people, they oftenly don't see uh, how the cultural barriers to norms affect laws or political
Yes.
representation.
Mm-hmm.
So the civil society can help them, uh, as Professor rightly mentioned, uh, help bridge that gap. Like, for example, showing how gender bias within political parties leads to fewer women candidates,
Mm-hmm.
and how social stigma limits youth participation and in decision making. So that kind of thing can be done by society organizations and the change in narratives, not just policies. So all the civil society organizations, they are looking for uh, change big policies and make big changes in the society and the political atmosphere. But uh, maybe using storytelling efforts and public campaigns
Mm-hmm.
to challenge the stereotypes, gender stereotypes, for instance, highlighting successful women leaders. In Bangladesh, I mean, they have highly reputed and very strong women politicians, including Sheikh Hasina and the mother of the current prime minister in Bangladesh. Uh, but we cannot see like especially youth representatives only,
Yes.
as I mentioned earlier, only 12 youth candidates have been selected, but only seven women candidates have been elected. Six from the main political party, only one from the independent political group. So,
Mm-hmm.
so the change in narratives beyond the policies also would be a kind of very important step, and also engaging political parties with the communities. So we have seen like communities are in kind of a one side, and political parties they are in one side. Only in, as Professor mentioned, only in the election times they come together and they do campaigns and they are talking about politics and they are talking about the political pages and manifestos and whatnot. But
Mm-hmm.
after the elections, what happened to citizens? What happened to the marginalized communities? what happened to the women activists and women communities. So that communication and then that relationship has to be made between the communities and political parties, and also uh, protecting and supporting those who take the risk to participate is also an important step for civil
Mm.
society organizations. Uh, and Also that long time processes, not only in the, I mean, civil society organizations like Odika in Bangladesh, they are not only concerned about the human right violations on
Yes.
the policy way, but also in the pre-election period and also post-election period and beyond. So that long-term process has to be established to have a safe space for the communities, especially for vulnerable communities and all.
Mm.
You know, John.
I see you googling, so I know you're going to say something.
No, John. As I was listening to Asanka,
Yes.
and this is not just the challenge for auxiliary groups in Nepal.
Mm.
It's a challenge for groups like us
Mm.
that there's a need to balance between the old work that we do and at
Mm.
the same time transition to new additional work that we need to do
Mm.
because of the changing landscape,
Yes.
the changing times.
Mm.
But there is that fascination that it's part of human character that you don't want to change.
Mm.
It's natural in groups, in NGOs, in
Yes.
developmental workers. You don't
Yes.
want to change, but I think reflecting on Asanka's answer, then there's a need to really evolve
Mm.
as much as possible.
Yes.
But at the same time, we need to be happy with incremental
Of
changes.
course.
Because there is that, that uh, there's that fascination with big changes,
Mm.
with earth shattering changes, but
Yes.
it doesn't happen.
Mm.
Yes, we have revolutions, we have uprisings, but most of the time,
Mm.
those are rare occurrences.
Yes.
But in our line of work, I think we need to be happy with the incremental changes, the small wins that we get
True.
along the way, because that's the way that we do our work,
Mm.
especially with the changing times
Yes.
and landscape.
I,
What do you
I
think, John?
I would also add no that um with huge changes, it entails, of course, continuous work and
Mm.
follow through because things don't just change immediately overnight. It takes a lot of work. And it also, as you said, trust in the process because it takes time.
Mm.
It will take time. And it's not, as you also said, not a very linear process in that you might have gains this time, but then you would also have
Mm.
back not backsliding, but like a
Mhm.
bit of a backtracking. So it takes a lot of work and consistency and patience. And I agree with you about innovations, of course, that we have to keep up with the times because things are changing and our approaches and methodologies also have to keep up with how things are changing. You know, I said earlier that we invited experts. And this is very evident because we're just on the second question. And you've had a lot of answers and responses, and we are about
This
to
might be
lose.
a two-part podcast.
We're about to lose our time.
We
So
will
I
try
would
to be
say,
precise, John. We'll try to be precise. Don't worry.
so I would ask my last question. No, one particular institution that a lot of us work with is of course election management bodies, and I've heard Ona say this because we've been in Nepal for a couple of days talking with different electoral stakeholders. And I've heard Ona say that there is trust in election management body,
Mhm.
at least in Nepal. No. So I was just wondering, as for my last question, and because it is critical, of course, the role of election management bodies in
Mhm.
ensuring electoral participation, in ensuring electoral integrity. I wanted to ask, how does the level of trust or distrust in the electoral system and in authorities managing elections, particularly electoral management bodies, How does it play in the engagement or disengagement of the electorate in elections? Maybe Jyoti, we go to you first.
Okay, thank you, John. Yeah, because and when I was talking about the trust, and this is one body or public institution where people are actually lacking, or there is a kind of decline level of trust in election management body. In fact,
Mm,
and it's not only concentrated in Thailand, because I was there and observing the election, and while talking to some of the political actors, in fact, voters, they showed this concern. They flagged this issue that election commission is not addressing or redressing the issues raised by the political candidate or the voters. So that is a very important sector where people or the government has to take quick action, because if those bodies are not managing or they are unable to get people's trust, I think the overall participation, because that trust is very much associated with the participation. If people are not having trust in such bodies, I think the long effect is that they will not be taking part in election or democratic structure
mm,
altogether. So
mm,
in one word, if you say that trust in election affect voter turnout,
mm.
if people believe that their vote is not going to affect the electoral verdict, so why to go out and vote, right? So because, and you have seen that in 2023 election, people have given their verdict for one party, but there
Yes.
was some kind of institutional interference through which that mandate was disregarded, and other parties, they formed the government. So, and that same thing happened, not directly, indirectly, that same thing was repeated for this election as well, where there was a kind of protest against the election commission and the local electoral bodies, that counting was not done properly. So there are different issues raised by this. And when I'm saying this is not only the observation, there are some factual information on this. If you look at the data from Global Barometer Survey, they conduct or they do studies to map the health of democracy, the political health of democracy or democracy altogether. They have also taken this as a kind of component of measuring the strength of democracy, and there is a decline in that institution because the political leaders or political actors or the government, they are trying to overshadow the such organization, and they are working as an agent of elections of government. So there can be some kind of responsiveness and some kind of proactiveness from such election management bodies, like whenever there is a kind of issue or concern raised by the voter or the political candidate, they should communicate or they should take quick action. So especially during the time of election, if some candidates are saying, because we saw that many candidates mention about this point, that their poster are being tarnished, and then in fact they are not getting enough space for putting their poster, and they also complain about such activities to the Election Commission of Thailand, but they said that their concern was unheard, no action was taken. In fact, they are taking some technological advancement, like they launched some apps where people can directly report the incidences of violence or vote buying, but there is no action. There is no
Mm,
technical support for the people, and therefore I can just conclude this with this, that only technical correctness is not important for enabling the trust. Like if election commission saying, see, our turnout is rising, voters are going to the polling station, everything is managed well in the at the polling stations. So these technical parts are not though they are required, but not very essential component of enabling or building trust in that institution. Rather, if people are saying that all electoral process like counting, voting, and all other concerns were addressed on time, where people believe that opposition candidate or parties are getting enough space for contesting election, the ground is equal, or the people and the voters are voting their concern. So voters are voting for their candidate, and that is actually turning up into the electoral results. I think these substantial parts are very important for managing and sustaining that trust in the election management body.
How about you, Asanka?
Well, in Bangladesh, the trust. Ona, you want to?
No, it's okay.
Okay.
Asaka. It's okay.
Uh, Public trust in in the election commission had, I mean, it kind of historically quite low, uh,
Mm.
especially in the previous electoral cycle, when many people, I mean, they perceived the institution as the election commission as kind of politically aligned and ineffective and with less capacity. Uh, Even after the appointment of the new election commission, uh, that feeling was same, and following the 2024 mass uprising. Uh, I mean, that distrust did not disappear immediately after the youth uprising.
Mm.
But in 2020, when it comes to 2026 elections, uh, we observed some improvements in public confidence and public trust compared to previous election cycles. The election commission, they have demonstrated a strong operational preparedness, especially we have seen in the polling day. The polling officers are very effective, and they were very supportive for voters, and well administrated and well prepared. Uh, and there was a kind of great openness for the public when it comes to the voter registration. They have introduced kind of a very technically advanced system to include all the voters as much as they can, especially for women voters. Uh, if you can remember, John, in the last podcast, we were discussing like the amount of the women
Yes.
station became high, and it was a kind of improvement in Bangladesh Election Commission. So this matters because when people believe elections are credible, uh,
Yes.
they can see free and fair elections, and they were more willing to go to polling stations and cast their vote. So
Mm.
and we saw that this reflected in the comparatively high enthusiasm among voters, especially among first-time voters, and especially among Gen Z voters and youth voters. So, if I say a number, kind of number, more than 4.5 million first-time voters were added to the electoral roll in Bangladesh in these elections, and the turnout was kind of highly fair. Uh, it it it,
Mm.
nearly 60%. So, the one important thing is in Bangladesh uh, context, people do not necessarily disengage completely with trust is low. You know,
Mm.
the mass uprising was happened. It created because of the distrust regarding the previous government and previous political authority. So
Yes.
this distrust has been created a kind of new political movement, and
Mm.
it it created the kind of a new political culture. We cannot simply say right now because uh, the government has been elected in few months ago, but but this change will be gradually happen, and in as I said, in Bangladesh context, this has been created a new culture, political culture. Not only, I mean, when it comes to kind of political activism and the reforms and the accountability, especially the institutional changes. So all the expectations were created from a distrust regarding the previous government. So
Mm.
uh, now the question is, uh, when we connect this trust issue with the July National Charter and its implementation and the
Mhm.
implementation of reform package that proposed by July National Charter. Especially youth people who were highly engaged with, who were actively engaged with the politics before the elections. Now they don't have kind of very big trust with the current government, whether they implement the United Nations Charter provisions, or whether they implement the reform package that proposed by the United Nations Charter. And the implementation has been, I mean, it has become kind of broadly contested in the parliament. Uh, the candidates, they had to, uh, I mean, while earlier disputes focus on the requirement for parliamentary member of parliament, to take a second oath as members of the Constitutional Reforms Council, in addition to give their oath as a member of parliament, it became a kind of very kind of, uh, I mean, it was very critical.
Yes.
They simply did not agree to give their oath for both positions. So there were some discussions, like, even though the July National Charter has been proposed, very important, crucial reforms to Bangladesh for elections, electoral system, politics, and anti-corruption movement, and for police sector, uh, administration especially. But the thing is, the political willingness is still critical, still challenging to implement those reforms and everything. So the trust is very important in
Yes.
Bangladesh situation now. Or 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 the uh, if not, the current government will take this reform package properly or honestly, uh, so the same pattern can be happen as a kind of revolution, or uprising, or something kind of turmoil.
I wanted to have some interjection, but we're running
I
out
can
of time.
interject.
So, your answer, Anna?
I have a story to share, John.
Sure.
It's
I
not a long story,
go
but
go
just to
go.
demonstrate how the level of trust of the electorate
Sure.
affects voting,
Mhm.
particularly. It will not be a story about Nepal because just like what you mentioned, John, earlier, there's high trust in the election commission. The voter turnout, the low voter turnout is due to other factors, but
Mhm.
not because of the trust in the election commission. But just to go back to my story to tell, Asanka and Jyoti, in our last elections in the Philippines, we introduced online voting. Our election management body introduced online voting. This was to increase voter turnout for our overseas voters because it was at 40% compared to 80% for the national voter turnout. So the answer of the election commission was introduce online voting to make it more accessible,
Mhm.
more easier. Unfortunately, there was no trust building
Mhm.
mechanisms done by the election commission or election commission. So a lot of voters, a lot of our overseas voters did not trust the system.
Mhm.
A lot of them felt that, is this a safe system? Will this be able to ensure that my vote will be counted? So unfortunately, because of that lack of trust building mechanism on the part of our election management body,
Yes.
the intended outcome for the online voting did not materialize.
Mhm.
Instead of our voter turnout increasing for overseas voting, it decreased actually.
Yes.
So that's a clear demonstration on how the trust of the people in the system, in the election management body, affects the elections and affects voting, especially the electorate.
Participation in
Yes.
elections. No, I can relate to that as an overseas
Yes.
Filipino voter. I voted, although of course I understand also the gaps in terms of reaching out to
Mhm.
the particular stakeholders, particularly of course overseas Filipinos who are registered as voters. I would want to continue on this discussion, but I don't want to keep you for longer
We
because
can continue the discussion, right,
no,
Asanka, Jyoti? No?
no,
Okay.
Ona. But thank you, Jyoti, Asanka, and of course, Ona,
Your
for
co-host.
yeah, later we'll have a closing spill
Mhm.
for joining us today. I know you still have to launch the report for your particular assignments, Thailand and Bangladesh. So good luck with
Good
that.
luck.
Good luck with that. But thank you again, Jyoti
Thank
and
you,
Asa.
Vijay. Thank you, Anand. And
Thank you.
thank you,
Yes.
Asanka, for sharing such a grounded story from this Bangladesh and Ona from Nepal. So all together, yeah, it's just together. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank
Thank
you.
you, Jyoti.
Thank you. I will hide you from
Okay.
the show so that Ona and I can close the show. But thank you again for joining. We hope to see you soon.
See you soon.
Bye.
Yes.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Yes, Ona.
Yes, John.
That has been the second part of the Election
Mm-hmm.
Observer podcast episode on empowering the electorate in participating
Did we empower them?
and engaging in elections and democracy exercises. Can you read this
Of
part?
course, you have to get the latest news and updates about ANFER programs and activities through our different online platforms like Facebook, X, I don't know what's the sign for linking, and TikTok pages. You can also subscribe to ANFREL's YouTube and WhatsApp channels.
Please follow the Election Observer podcast on Spotify and Apple Podcast. We'll upload this episode after this episode.
Do we
Uh,
say this in unison?
no, I will say thank you for joining us again today. I have been your host, John Antiquera.
And I have been your co-host, Ona Caritos.
Have a great day, everyone.
Bye!
Bye.